There was a time when comic books weren't hidden behind glass cases or sealed in protective plastic. They were everywhere. Children stuffed them into their backpacks. Friends traded them on playgrounds. Teenagers rushed to local stores on release day, hoping to grab the newest issue before it sold out. For just a few cents, you could hold an entire universe in your hands. Superman taught kids to believe in doing the right thing. Batman showed that determination could overcome fear. Spider-Man reminded young readers that growing up wasn't easy and that ordinary people could still become extraordinary. For millions of Americans, comic books weren't just entertainment. They were part of childhood. Many people still remember walking into a corner store with a few coins in their pockets. They'd spin the comic rack slowly, searching for the perfect cover. The excitement was real. Would this be the issue where the hero finally won? Would a new villain appear? Would this comic someday become valuable? Children rushed home to read them before dinner. Some carefully placed them in boxes. Others folded them into their back pockets and shared them with friends until the pages began falling apart. Nobody imagined those simple moments would become lifelong memories. By the 1960s and 1970s, comic book collecting had begun transforming into something much bigger. Collectors emerged. Fans organized conventions. People started realizing that older issues could become valuable. The hobby exploded. Then came the 1980s and 1990s. For many collectors, this was a golden age. Comic book shops appeared in towns across America. Wednesday became sacred for fans eager to discover what happened next. Friends debated which heroes were the strongest. Collectors hunted for first appearances and limited editions. Entire communities formed around shared passions. For some, comic books provided an escape from difficult realities. A shy kid struggling to fit and could find comfort in Peter Parker's awkwardness. Someone dealing with fear could relate to Bruce Wayne's pain. Children who felt different discovered heroes who reminded them that being different wasn't always a weakness. Comic books didn't just tell stories. They helped people through loneliness, through heartbreak, through growing up. Parents introduced their favorite heroes to their children. Older brothers passed down worn copies that had survived years of love and neglect. In bedrooms across America, long boxes slowly filled with dreams, adventures, and memories. Then something unexpected happened. People stopped buying comics just to read them. They started buying them to get rich. Publishers released special editions, collector covers, and limited printings designed to attract investors. Suddenly, everyone believed they were sitting on future fortunes. People bought multiple copies of the same issue without opening them. Comic books became investments, and for a while, it seemed like the excitement would never end. Then reality arrived. The bubble burst, and the hobby would never be quite the same again. When the comic book market crashed in the 1990s, many collectors were left shocked. The issues they had carefully stored away, believing they would one day pay for college tuition or retirement, often turned out to be worth far less than anyone had imagined. Comic shops that had once been packed with eager customers struggled to survive. Some closed their doors forever. For many fans, it felt like watching a piece of their childhood disappear. At the same time, the world itself was changing. Video games became more immersive. The internet transformed entertainment. Children who once spent afternoons reading comics were now spending hours online. Streaming services, smartphones, and social media competed for every spare moment of attention. The ritual began to fade. No more bike rides to the local comic shop. No more spinning the comic rack while deciding how to spend a few dollars. No more arguments with friends over who would win in a fight between Batman and Spider-Man. As older collectors grew older, fewer young readers entered the hobby in the same numbers. Long boxes filled with carefully preserved comics ended up in attics, closets, garages, and basements. Sometimes forgotten, sometimes inherited, sometimes rediscovered decades later by children sorting through their parents' belongings. And when those boxes were opened, they often contained more than comic books. They contained memories. The issue someone bought with their allowance after weeks of saving. The comic a father gave his son because it had been his favorite growing up. The worn copy that had been read so many times the staples had begun to rust. The autograph collected at a convention that once felt like the greatest treasure in the world. Because comic book collecting was never just about value. It wasn't really about finding the next rare issue. It was about imagination. It was about hope. It was about believing that ordinary people could do extraordinary things. For countless children, superheroes became companions during difficult moments. They offered courage during uncertain times. They reminded readers that setbacks didn't define who they were. That responsibility mattered. That kindness mattered. That even flawed people could rise above fear and become heroes. Today, comic book collecting hasn't disappeared completely. Dedicated collectors still hunt for missing issues. Conventions continue drawing passionate fans from around the world. Local comic shops still survive in many communities, welcoming anyone curious enough to walk through their doors. Parents still introduce their favorite heroes to a new generation. And somewhere tonight, someone will open an old long box and pull out a comic they haven't seen in years. The pages may be yellowed. The corners may be bent. The cover may carry the marks of a childhood spent reading under blankets with a flashlight long after bedtime. But the feeling returns instantly. For a moment, they're 12 years old again, standing in front of a spinning comic rack, trying to decide which adventure to bring home. The golden age of comic book collecting may be behind us, but the stories never really ended. Because the greatest thing comic books ever gave us wasn't the possibility of becoming rich. It was a belief that no matter how ordinary life seemed, courage, imagination, and hope could still change the world. And maybe that's why, even after all these years, we still remember exactly how it felt to turn the page and discover what happened next.